Hello and welcome to another episode of the Average Joe Football Show. I'm your host, Joe Thiessen. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of John D. Rockefeller's favorite football podcast, as today in 1916 he becomes the world's first billionaire. He was an oil industry.
That was all off. That was just, oh man, I don't know, man. We got to do that again.
You think so?
Yeah, the vibe. Have you never listened to my intro ever? Have you never listened to it?
Tell me you're kidding.
No. Have you never listened? I really think that you didn't bring it that time. The vibe was off. The cadence was off. The person, you said
Okay,
a
you do it
person, then you went directly into a fact. You didn't even give me a chance to talk. And you're not the host either.
I'm joined, obviously, by my illustrious host, Joe Fair. How's it going, Joe?
It's going well. It's going well, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm sick of being the host.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, I know. That's
I
why
want to quit.
That's why I wanted you to intro the show today, and you completely blew it. I don't even know if we can use that footage.
Nah, I thought it was pretty good.
No,
It's not footage, it's audio.
Audio footage. That's a thing,
Okay.
right?
Sure. Yeah.
John D.
I did a good job.
John D. Rockefeller,
Yeah.
really? What are we supposed to talk about now? About John D.
Um,
Rockefeller becoming the first billionaire ever?
Yeah.
And what day
That's
was
why
that?
they know him.
Yeah, I know.
It was just in 1960. I don't know if it was on this day, but I think it's pretty close.
1960? That's when they had the first...
1916.
1916. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. $1 billion is a lot of money.
That is insane.
Especially
in
back then.
1916?
Wow.
Holy smokes. I wonder what that would translate now to, like, inflation-wise.
Oh, man. Probably like at least $2 billion.
at least 1.5, right?
Yeah. Can you Google something like that? I don't even think that Google has those kinds of answers.
Here, let me look up. You just look up 1 billion. Yeah, what would you even type in? $1 billion in
1916.
Worth today. $1 billion in 1916 is equivalent to about what? To about, that's not right.
What?
This says, what? Is that not 20? What?
Huh?
Oh, sorry. This is $1 million. So $1 million, $1 million in 1916 is equivalent to $25 million today.
Wow.
So you could
So
very...
it's worth 4 times. No, sorry.
It's worth 25 times.
Yeah,
the
sorry.
amount.
I was thinking in quarters, like 25, 50, 75,
Yeah.
100. For some reason, I was thinking in quarters.
If math is correct, and I can't even pull up my freaking calculator on my phone right now. If math is correct, so that's $1 billion.
Okay, yeah.
So what would that be?
999,999 times 25, right?
What would this be? Wouldn't it just be? I don't know.
Wouldn't it just be? Oh man, Joe.
I'm so embarrassed.
Wouldn't it be?
Because 25 times wouldn't it just be 25 billion? Wouldn't it be 25 billion?
Oh man. It would not be.
Why not? If it's 25 times, 1 million is 25 million. Would it not just then be 25 billion?
No, it can't be.
Why? Why not?
It's way too
Inflation
easy.
is 25. Sometimes, what's that? The easiest solution.
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor. Right?
It cannot be.
Oh, man. We're just laughing because we're so
Sad
that we don't know how to do that math.
Yeah, that is pretty sad.
Oh, man. I
Oh,
would have had to
man.
sit down for at least a half hour beforehand to try to figure that out.
If 1 million equals 25 million, 1 billion is... Oh, my gosh, man.
Oh, man.
I don't even get it.
For those of you that are listening, make sure you leave a 5-star review and tell us if 1 million is 25 million, how much is 1 billion? 25 billion, right? 25 times. It's maybe.
It cannot be.
Oh man. There's an inflation calculator. Oh shoot, there's an inflation calculator. Okay, we're about to find out. How many zeros is a billion? 100 million, right? 1, 2,
What?
3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 100 million is a no.
Oh.
What is it? 1,000.
1 million. 1 million is one with 6 zeros. Shut up. 6 zeros.
Yeah, that's 1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's it? 1
you add
billion.
another 3 zeros to that, and that
Okay.
becomes a billion.
So 1,000
right?
million.
I hate how you say that.
Dude, it's
1,000
25.
million.
It's 25 billion. I was right. It's 25 billion. $1 billion. Look, $1 billion. In 1916 is worth $25 billion today. Almost $25.1 billion.
Wow.
Who's laughing now?
If I honestly had $0.1 billion, I'd be happy.
I'd be fine.
Yeah.
0.1 billion?
0.1 bill.
$1 million?
0.1 bill, yeah.
0.1
100
bill.
mil, actually, is what it would be. 0.001 would be.
Dude, it's too much.
No, this is me. I'm the better magician. Mathematician. Oh, come on.
Goodness gracious. This is what happens when you intro the show.
I know.
It's completely off the rails. We're going to be
Off the rails and off-road.
off
That brings us to our sponsor, Jeep Wrangler.
Jeep Wrangler.
You can buy your Jeep today at the Dodge Caravan Jeep dealer.
Jeep. Do you want to buy a car and for some reason you have to wave at everybody else that has that same car?
Yep.
Why not buy a Jeep?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's up with that?
Everybody who has the same kind of car, except for like a typical car. Like if you drive a Jeep, you do that.
Yeah.
If you drive like a cool Subaru, you do
Yeah.
that, or a cool
Yeah.
motorbike.
Yeah,
All bikers
motorcyclists
do
yeah.
it. Yeah.
I don't know. It's
If you
just
drive a cool
yeah.
old car, you do it. Just certain like particular.
Yeah. It's an exclusive club.
It's discriminatory,
yeah.
and I won't stand for it.
I never wave it. Like I own a Ford F-150. I never once have waved at another person for having a Ford F-150.
Okay.
Yeah, I never have. And
Okay.
you own a Matrix, Toyota Matrix.
Yep.
Toyota Matrix.
I wave at all the Matrix owners
Matrix owners. We have our own club
because
It's a
buying a
Facebook-
Matrix is the
Facebook
smartest thing
group.
you can ever do.
Okay. Sure.
Cheap,
Yeah.
smart on fuel.
Smart on fuel.
Yep. And
It's not really great on fuel, but it can comprehend it well.
yeah.
Much better than we can inflation.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah,
I was totally
exactly.
right, and you laughed in my face.
Well, we laugh in each other's faces.
I have never felt more insecure than when I said that that 1 billion would be 25 billion.
I know. I could see it in your eyes.
It was fear. I was a deer in
man.
headlights.
We
at
were
that
both
point.
laughing but kind of crying because we were kind of scared that we didn't know.
We're not
We
that
probably
smart.
should.
We never went to college. Is the moral of this story?
I actually did.
Well, okay. You went to trade.
I did math in college.
Okay.
So I did college for math.
Yeah, but you didn't really go to college.
I did.
Not a real.
For 3 months.
Not a real college. Yeah, 3 months. No, that's not real.
That's when I went to college at least.
So
I have a student card and a jacket, Joe.
you would.
And a lanyard. Who's laughing now?
Who's laughing now? Not the people listening to this show, that's for sure. This is the Average Joe Football Show. If this is your first time tuning in, usually Joe doesn't intro the show, so it's not ruined within the first few minutes of the show.
Right?
Sorry. That's okay. That's maybe a little. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it
Sometimes I
pushing-
take it too far.
You do push it.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Sorry. I appreciate you. Okay.
I know.
You did. The intro was not the best, but we made it through. We talk about football on this show sometimes. Most of the times. Basically every episode we actually do. It is the Average Joe Football Show after all. We like to start every episode not talking football, but rather talking inflation, politics, world issues.
World issues. Yeah.
What are some examples of the things that we've talked about at the top of this show?
If your wife thought you died in war and got remarried, and
Yeah.
had kids, if you'd be sad when you got home.
That was
Well, I
one-
mean, you would be sad.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, what would you do?
Yeah. I think we decided to fight to the death with the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about that. We've talked about, we've been, obviously, COVID. We won't get into that garbage. What's something else that we've, just for an example for first-time listeners, what else have we talked about at the top of the show?
Bald men.
Bald men. That was at the back of the show, actually.
Top of show. Oh.
Yeah, that was the draft.
We talked to Bill Gates. We've
Bill
talked,
Gates. This is the
Amp Me.
Amp Me. That was a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our first ever sponsor.
It was.
Our first ever involuntary sponsor. They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't ask to sponsor us.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. And they're not paying us.
No.
But this podcast is sponsored by
We're
Ant Me.
dumping just so much cash into there. Yeah.
We have an Ant Me Premium.
Yeah.
For those of you that-
$14 weekly.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Ant Me is an app that you can sync up your music
Mm-hmm.
with somebody else's, right?
Yeah.
It costs like $4,000 a month.
Yeah. It's
For
ridiculously
Ant Me.
expensive for what it is.
Yeah. So
When
instead
you can really, you can just time it
Yeah.
pretty good.
or buy a Bluetooth speaker.
Yep.
Hey, you can't afford a Bluetooth speaker? Can you then afford 2 phones and a membership to Ant Me?
Yeah.
No?
Honestly, they make decent Bluetooth speakers for so cheap anymore that,
Yeah.
You should.
And that's why Ant Me is sponsoring this podcast.
Yeah.
They're in dire straits right now. They're in a
Yeah.
tough spot.
Mm-hmm.
They came to this show. And they came to these Joes. But we're going to talk football at some point today. I'm going to talk about week 3 and the craziness that was week 3. I'm going to do a little segment I like to call Stock Up or Stock Down. That's right. We're talking stocks today. Who is on the rise in the NFL? Who's on the opposite of a rise, the fall in the NFL? No Mike on today's show. He is feeling under the weather, so it's just me again. We're going to go back to the way that we used to do things, where I talk to myself and you listen to myself, and it's just me.
On this day in 1922, Benito Mussolini asked Vatican for support of fascist party program.
Oh, and what did they say?
Doesn't say.
Okay.
Must have been tomorrow or something in this day in history.
What?
And on this day in history, in 1927, the telephone service begins between the U.S. and Mexico.
Oh, wow. In what day? What year?
Today, 1927.
Oh, wow. Until then, you couldn't call Mexico?
Yeah, you could not. No way.
Wow.
And I guess this is kind of going in with our show today. It's on this day in history, in 1930, the first Canadian football game played under lights in Hamilton, UBC.
Played under lights. They played in the dark until then.
Yep.
It's very hard to see. Yeah, they didn't even know what sport they were playing. What day was that? What year? All right, I don't listen.
1930. Yeah, I know
to
you don't.
anything you say. While you're talking, I'm already thinking. So, 1930. That's like, okay. I don't know. I don't really have anything to say to that one. Not gonna lie.
1941, on this day in history, Nazi massacre at Babi Yar ravine near Kiev, Ukraine begins. 33,771, mostly Jews, are murdered.
I don't know. You didn't have to say that one. Not all of them have to be said. Like, I see that you're scrolling, so obviously you're skipping some, but you chose to do that one. Because I see you right now, you're scrolling on your phone, so you're skipping over other things that happened on this day, but you chose to say that one. So, I don't really know.
1953, Make Room for Daddy, starring Danny Thomas, premieres on ABC TV.
Why is that even significant? That's a show I've never even heard of. I don't even, like, whatever. I don't know.
1956, Oh Susanna debuts on CBS TV.
Okay, I think this is enough. Thanks though. You got anything else you want to say before I jump into football? Other than, no?
Nope. No, I'm
Okay.
good, actually. It's actually
Okay.
pretty good. But in this day in 1961, Bob Dylan's first recording session this is just session backup harmonica for Caroline Hester.
All right.
So a lot of
Well,
really invigorating things that happen in this day in history.
Yeah, man. This is, I don't know. I'm sorry for anybody that's listening to this podcast for the first time. It's not usually like this. But unless we have anything else we'd like to waste time with, Joe, you said no. You said no. I say no. Let's jump into some football. Three weeks into the NFL season, and not really sure what to make out of a lot of the teams in the NFL. This feels like one of the more bizarre years I can remember. And that's kind of weird to say, considering last year was literally the most bizarre year in NFL history on account of COVID, or in everything that entailed. This year, however, not so much that aspect, the off-the-field stuff, but just the on-the-field product has been incredibly bizarre. Like teams one week looking like the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then the next week looking like a team that's going to pick first overall in the draft. I cannot get a read on who's good, who's bad, who's the best, who's going to be in the playoffs, and who's not even going to win their division. It's been tough this year. There's been a lot of bizarre outcomes, and week 3 was one of the crazier weeks we've had, and that's saying something because the first 3 weeks have been incredibly crazy. Obviously, there's no Mike on today's show, so it's just me talking. I got to get back in the swing of things of just talking to myself. It's honestly a completely different feel when it's just you talking. Puts the pressure on you a little bit more. I can't have any silences. And I'm slowly starting to feel that right now. No, I'm just kidding. On today's show, I'm just going to go through the 3 biggest games from this week, the games that I felt were the ones that are worth the most talking about, and I think they're the biggest games with the biggest implications. And then we're going to get into a segment that I did during last season, where I did stock up and stock down on NFL teams, NFL players, and all that good stuff. We're gonna tell you who's on the rise and who's not on the rise in the week 3 of the 2020 NFL season, and we'll kind of talk about all the rest of the games during that segment. But first up, I want to start by talking about Sunday Night Football, another primetime game that was an absolute classic. We've had our fair share of those. It seems like every single primetime game that we have, I cannot stay awake for the life of me because I'm a dad now and I'm tired all the time and I constantly fall asleep at like 9:45, and it's really hard for me to stay awake. I stayed awake for most of this one, and it was worth it. The Green Bay Packers win 30-28 over the San Francisco 49ers. The Packers started the game off real hot, up 17-0 in the first half. Before the end of the half, Jimmy G struggled a lot in the first half. Offense was not able to finish drives, looked ugly at times, and then they marched the ball down near the end of the half, and then Trey Lance comes in, scores the touchdown. At that point, I tweeted, how about we just don't let Jimmy G come back into the game, Kyle Shanahan, something along those lines. And honestly, the vibe of the game, the way it was going at that point, it would not have shocked me to see Trey Lance stay in at quarterback and have Jimmy G's day just be over and his tenure as starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers just be over. But that did not happen. In fact, Jimmy G came out in the second half, stormed back, and made it a really, really good game down the stretch. They were able to bring it back into a competitive game. But my main takeaways from this game are Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams very well I don't even know if I can say might be. I think it is just official. They are the best wide receiver quarterback duo in the NFL. Their dominance in this game was, it is beautiful to watch what Aaron Rodgers was able to do with Davante Adams. Aaron Rodgers finished 23 for 33, 261 yards and 2 touchdowns, an efficient game. And then Davante Adams with 12 receptions, 132 yards and a touchdown. And these two, their chemistry just seems to be on a completely different level. These guys, when they get it going, Aaron Rodgers puts the ball in spots where only Davante Adams can get it. And Davante Adams, he might be the best receiver in football. I kind of pushed back on that talking to some friends this weekend before the game. That I was thinking, I don't know if I'm ready to say that Davante Adams is the best receiver in football with people like DeAndre Hopkins and Tyreek Hill. But Davante Adams did a dang good job of showing that he probably is the best receiver in the NFL. And him and Aaron Rodgers looked absolutely phenomenal. And Jimmy G on the 49ers side, he actually played quite well down the stretch after struggling early. He finished 25 for 40, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. However, late in the game, he had an absolutely boneheaded fumble. And that's the thing with Jimmy G. We know what Jimmy G is. He's a game manager. He can make the throws. He's a talented He's a talented quarterback. It's never been that aspect, but he has these moments where he just makes decisions that are mind-boggling. And in this instance, he gets pressured, and this is late in the game. This is quite late in the game in a critical spot. He gets pressured, he spins around, and he throws the ball backwards. And because he threw it backwards, it's a fumble. It's a lateral. So the Packers recover. They get it in their own territory. They end up kicking a field goal, which increased the Green Bay Packers lead. But then after that, Jimmy G actually led a really nice touchdown drive. He drove the San Francisco 49ers down the field, gave them a 1-point lead. The only problem was he gave them a 1-point lead with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback for the Green Bay Packers and 37 seconds left on the clock, which is insane. There was no timeouts for the Packers. 37 seconds. Aaron Rodgers comes onto the field, just cold as ice, marches the Packers down the field. Mason Crosby ends up hitting a 51-yard field goal to win the game. But this was an incredible game. And Aaron Rodgers, just after struggling in week 1 and then struggling in the first half of week 2, he looks to be all the way back. And any rumors that he potentially might sabotage the Packers or he's in it so that the Packers stink this year. He's just a spy or something. He's come to take down the Packers. That doesn't look so hot, those rumors this week, because Aaron Rodgers looked phenomenal in this game. And these two teams, I think, can walk away feeling encouraged about this game. The Packers look to be right back to Super Bowl contenders where they were last year, and the San Francisco 49ers with Jimmy G, they were able to take a Super Bowl contender like the Green Bay Packers to the very brink, and they could potentially improve when they bring in Trey Lance. And I think it's fine to not bring in Trey Lance, despite my tweet that I had in that game. I understand Kyle Shanahan, who's one of the best coaches in the NFL, if he doesn't feel like it's the right time, and I really feel like Kyle Shanahan really wanted Trey Lance to win that starting job. He really wanted Trey Lance to be the starter there in San Francisco. But if he feels like he's not ready, then he's not going to put him in. And Kyle Shanahan's a lot smarter than me, and I don't think it's insane to have a quarterback sit and learn, especially somebody as raw as Trey Lance, a guy who has all the talent but just hasn't played that much football. I don't think it's bad to have him sit behind Jimmy G and just learn for a little bit. But we'll have to see where that goes in the future. How long till Jimmy G loses that starting? I think it will be at some point. Jimmy G will lose that starting spot to Trey Lance. But in this game, it was all about the Packers, and Aaron Rodgers, just continues to show that he's one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. Then on to the next game that featured the defending Super Bowl champions going up against the new-look Los Angeles Rams. This was a surprising game. I picked the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win this game. I thought they were the most dominant team in the NFL. I remember asking either last week or in week 1, asking Mike if any team could possibly, compete with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They look so dominant offensively, defensively, and they have struggled with injuries in the secondary. I think that's been a factor for them, and that was a factor for them in this game. But the Los Angeles Rams proved that there absolutely can be a team that can compete with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that team happens to be quarterbacked by Matthew Stafford, and that's the Los Angeles Rams, who walked away with a 34-24 victory. And in my notes I have, this is why Matthew Stafford is in LA. This offense that we saw in this game is exactly what Sean McVay pictured when he brought in Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford finished the game 27 for 38, 343 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had a 75-yard bomb to Deshaun Jackson, who will forever be the fastest player in the NFL. He's up there in age. He's probably definitely in his mid-30s at this point, and is still incredibly fast, still can be one of the best deep threats in the NFL. He had a 75-yard touchdown, finished today with 3 catches, 120 yards and a touchdown. And then Cooper Kupp has been on an absolute tear. He leads the NFL in receiving yards through 3 weeks with 367 yards through 3 games. He had 9 receptions, 96 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game. A phenomenal performance by Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, and this Rams offense against a defense that has a reputation for being one of the best defenses in the NFL. Just an overall fantastic performance by the Los Angeles Rams to go in, or to have Tampa Bay come in, Tom Brady come in. Tampa Bay had not lost a game since November 29th, 2020, and they also had scored 30 points in 9 straight games. So to have them come in, not score 30 points, lose a game for the first time since last year in November, a big-time win for Sean McVay and the Rams. On the Bucs side of things, Tom Brady finished 41 for 55. He threw the ball 55 times for 432 yards, a touchdown. He also had a rushing touchdown. Mike Evans chipped in with a 100-yard game. And then Chris Godwin had himself a game as well, 74 yards receiving and a rushing touchdown. One of the biggest problems for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers through 3 weeks is they have absolutely no balance whatsoever. I talked about Tom Brady throwing the ball 55 times. That's basically been the story for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers through 3 weeks, is they are relying on Tom Brady and this array of pass catchers, very talented group of pass catchers, to be the entire offense. Tom Brady led the team in rushing yards in this game. Tom Brady, 44-year-old Tom Brady, led the team in rushing yards with 14 yards. And they're averaging just over 50 yards per game, which is 31st in the NFL. And just you got to have more balance. You got to be able to milk the clock in certain situations. But as far as the Rams go, this is exactly how I thought the Rams offense could look with Matthew Stafford. I talked about this is what Sean McVay dreamt of. This is what I felt we could see with Matthew Stafford. This explosive aspect of this offense. Some of the downfield shots, and then Cooper Kupp just playing out of his mind. This team is going to be extremely hard to deal with, and especially, we haven't even talked about defensively. They have Aaron Donald, who is the best player in the NFL. They have Jalen Ramsey, who is the best defensive back in the NFL. This team is primed and ready to go, and they just very well might be the best team in the NFL at this point. We've seen the Kansas City Chiefs struggle so far, and we'll talk about them next. And they now defeated the defending Super Bowl champs in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Rams look primed to be a Super Bowl contender, even being in the NFC West that is so competitive. The Rams look primed and ready to go. And then on to the final of the big games that I wanted to talk about, and it is another surprising win for a team that looks to be on the way up, and that's the Los Angeles Chargers going into Arrowhead Stadium and defeating the Kansas City Chiefs 30-24. Justin Herbert continues to be absolutely phenomenal. I mean, this guy has been incredible. In just his second year, people worried he might have the sophomore slump. He certainly does not look to be slumping at all, especially when he finishes a game against the Chiefs 26 for 38, 281 yards, 4 touchdowns. Austin Eckler had over 100 all-purpose yards, and Mike Williams, who has been phenomenal through 3 weeks. He's been a genuine number one receiver on an offense that already has Keenan Allen, one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. This Chargers offense, with Justin Herbert at the helm, with Brandon Staley, their new head coach, they look to be one of the best teams in the NFL, and we saw them take it to one of the best teams in the NFL in the Kansas City Chiefs. Too many mistakes in this game for Kansas City. The Los Angeles Chargers forced Kansas City into 4 turnovers. Patrick Mahomes had 2 interceptions. He finished today with 260 yards, 27 for 44, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. Clyde Edwards-Helaire finally got things going. Travis Kelce had himself a big game. Tyreek Hill for the second straight week, however, could not really get it going. My biggest takeaway from this game is that the Chargers are finally living up to the hype. And I know it's only 3 weeks in, and a lot can happen through 17 now games in the NFL season. But through 3 weeks, the Chargers look to be everything that people thought they could be. And Justin Herbert looks to be an MVP candidate through 3 weeks. as far as the Kansas City Chiefs go, one of my biggest takeaways from this game is Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, first of all, let me just say he's the best quarterback in the NFL. As good as Justin Herbert is, Patrick Mahomes, I'm still taking him over Justin Herbert. Patrick Mahomes is amazing. However, some things that I've noticed, and it's been the past few weeks, I noticed it in the Baltimore Ravens game. I've noticed it a few times. Patrick Mahomes, I think, plays a little bit too cocky sometimes. I think he gets a little bit too confident, and I can understand how you get so confident when you're literally the best, most talented quarterback to ever play football, like Patrick Mahomes is. I can understand where that confidence comes from, but some of the plays he makes, it seems like he's trying to make incredible plays at all times. And he had a play in this game where he threw an ugly interception with the game tied at 24, 2 minutes and 15 seconds left. At about midfield, he throws a bomb down the field that honestly he did not need to throw, but it looked like he was just trying to make something amazing happen again. Chargers pick it off. Then the Chargers march down the field to score a go-ahead touchdown. And, Patrick Mahomes, sometimes I feel like somebody needs to just tell him, hey, man, just take the easy things. Like, you have Andy Reid, one of the greatest coaches of all time, one of the greatest offensive coaches of all time. Can you not just just do the easy thing one time? Because some of the things with Patrick Mahomes, he puts his team, obviously, good, best quarterback in the NFL, and he is the reason why the Chiefs are winning so many games. But there's certain situations where he puts his team in tough spots as well. And Josh Allen is very much the same way, probably to an even higher extent, where the high plays are so high and just like one of the best athletes we've ever seen. But sometimes he makes decisions like, why would you do that? Why would you? And I think sometimes with Patrick Mahomes, he trusts himself too much. He trusts his arm too much at sometimes, and he thinks that he can rely completely on his arm, and I think that got him into trouble in this game. We talked about the Kansas City Chiefs had 4 turnovers in this game, and that's obviously in big part to the defense that Brandon Staley has coached up there in Los Angeles. They have an incredible defense with Derwin James now healthy, Joey Bosa, he was injured in this game but still played well, and just talent all across the board there in Los Angeles, and I'm convinced that if the Chargers can avoid chargering and doing chargery things, they can be one of the best teams in the NFL, just talent-wise, and that's something we've known from the jump. They're an incredibly talented team. If they can just avoid the silly mental errors, they can be one of the best teams in the NFL. And speaking of the silly mental errors, it was late in this game, after that Patrick Mahomes interception, the Chargers get the ball with about 2 minutes left. They're marching the ball down the field, and they're in field goal range, and I thought they got a little lucky with the way that things turned out, because instead of running out the clock, they're already well in within field goal range. It's not a long field goal at this point. Like, it's a manageable, very easy field goal. Instead of running the clock out, running the ball with Austin Eckler, who had played pretty well up to that point, they just continue to throw the ball. And they had a play earlier on that same series where it was 4th and 4. They get a false start. It's 4th and 9. And then Brandon Staley still decides to go for it. He was originally going to go for it on 4th and 4. And usually if a team gets the false start, they say, okay, we're not going to go for it now. And the game's tied up at 24 at this point. Brandon Staley decides, no, we're still going it on 4th and 9. And that play I appreciate, because I've always said, if you want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, you have to be the aggressor. You have to take the game. You have to take the game from the Kansas City Chiefs. So that play call I like. But some of the later things where they're getting deep down into field goal position, and they're still throwing the ball instead of running out the clock at all, that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's one thing to be the aggressor and to take the game, and it's another thing to make questionable decision. I thought that decision by whether it was Brandon Staley or it was Justin Herbert checking into pass plays when it should have been run plays, I don't know exactly what happened there, but it's one thing to be aggressive, and it's another thing to just hand Patrick Mahomes the ball back with 30-some seconds, which isn't a lot, but they also had a timeout that the Chiefs didn't have to burn because the Chargers were passing the ball instead of running the ball, and the Chargers kicker also missed the extra point, which is maybe an argument for why they didn't just go for the field goal, because he missed the extra point. And just when he missed that extra point, it was like, okay, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs now have the ball back with about 30-some seconds left and one timeout. This seems like such a Chargers way to lose this game, but I think they got a little lucky there at the end. But up until that point, I don't think there was any luck involved. I think the Chargers are primed, just like the Rams, to be a Super Bowl contender if things continue on the track that they're on right now. Obviously, they're in an incredibly competitive division, and they'll have to, play incredible just to get out of the division and to win that division. I still don't give up on the Chiefs coming back and winning that division, but a big-time win for Justin Herbert and for Brandon Staley and for this Los Angeles Chargers team. And as far as the Chiefs go, I know a lot of people are overreacting and saying, what's wrong with the Chiefs? What's wrong with the Chiefs? And it's the same thing with the Buccaneers. The NFL, like we talk about all the time, is very much an overreaction league. You overreact every single week because you only have one game to react to per team, so you just have to overreact. And my argument for not worrying too much about the Chiefs and about the Buccaneers is you have to lose. Teams lose games. It happens. You're going to lose games. You're going to have bad games. We saw the Packers in week 1 get absolutely destroyed by the New Orleans Saints, and since then have looked like one of the best teams in the NFL. You lose games, you have bad games, so I'm not too worried about the Kansas City Chiefs. I know everybody's like, what's wrong with them? They have a losing record for the first time since 2015, and they're in last place of a very competitive AFC West, but I'm trying not to overreact 3 weeks into an NFL season with the best quarterback in football, the best team in football. I think the Chiefs will be fine. I think the Buccaneers will be fine. Teams lose games, but for the Chargers and for the Rams, these are big wins, and these are wins that get you respect. They get you acknowledgement. They get you recognition. You just got to be careful not to go out the next week and lay an egg. Now on to the rest of the games from Week 3, and a segment I like to call Stock Up and Stock Down. This is something we did last year, and I'm just basically going to say stock up on things that I think are trending upwards, and stock down on things that are trending downwards through 3 weeks in the NFL, in the 2021 NFL season. The first stock up that I have is the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they're a big stock up. They had a big-time win this week, a crazy win in overtime, took almost the entire overtime period against Jacoby Brissett and the Miami Dolphins. They win that game 31-28. And the Raiders, they're a stock up because they're 3-0. The Las Vegas Raiders are 3-0. Derek Carr looks like an MVP candidate. This offense is explosive. They are the real deal. Despite going down 14-0 early on in that game, I thought they played really well down the stretch. Guys like Henry Ruggs, who struggled last year at times, struggled to stay on the field, I thought he looked phenomenal in this game. I mean, not just being that deep threat, not just being that down the field target, but going up and getting balls, going up and getting those contested catches. He looks like a legit receiver. I was very impressed by him. Bryan Edwards has looked really well. Darren Waller obviously is amazing. This offense looks really good, and their defense, that defensive line with Max Crosby and with Yannick Ngakoue, they've looked really good through 3 weeks. They got a lot of pressure on Jacoby Brissett in this game. They've been one of the best defensive line duos in the NFL. So to me, the Las Vegas Raiders through 3 weeks are a major stock up. They look to be on their way to competing for a playoff spot, and then right now they sit atop the NFC West, a very competitive, AFC West with the Denver Broncos. They're both now 3-0, so a major stock up for the Las Vegas Raiders. And in that same game, a major stock down on the Dolphins rebuild. And this one is a little bit of a deeper one than the Las Vegas Raiders. To me, this season has gone from getting a win in Foxborough for the Dolphins was encouraging. Everything looked good. Everybody was excited as far as Dolphins and Dolphins Twitter goes. Through the last 2 weeks, it's been extremely discouraging because this rebuild that the Dolphins fans have been sold on, they tore this entire team down to shreds. They built back up. They got a bunch of draft picks. Now they're supposed to be at the point where they're competing, and things don't look good right now. Honestly, there are some major holes on this team, and the biggest being the offensive line. And I talked about it already last week. I won't get too much into it, but an offensive line that just was a major problem. We knew that it was a major problem, and the Dolphins didn't do a whole lot to fix that offensive line. They just kind of hoped that all of the players would take a big step forward from where they were last year, and that's not the case. And just discouraging signs. They drafted quarterback number 5 overall in Tua Tagovailoa, who is currently sitting on IR. This is the second time in the NFL he's struggled with injuries, and that was the biggest thing coming out of college was his injury issues. And the quarterback that was selected immediately after him with the 6th pick is incredible. Justin Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL through 2 years. He was the Rookie of the Year last year, and right now Tua sits on IR, and that does not look good for the Dolphins organization. And we talked about the draft picks that they acquired, and I've talked about this time and time again on this podcast. So what if you can acquire draft picks? And everybody wants to sing the praises of Chris Grier for acquiring all these draft picks, and they've had so many. But you got to be able to do something with these draft picks. Eventually, you have to have winning players. Draft picks don't win you NFL games. And just go back to that 2020 draft. They had 3 first-round picks. Those 3 picks were Tua Tagovailoa, Austin Jackson, and Noah Igbenogany. They were the 3 first-round picks in that 2020 draft. Tua, like we talked about, sitting on IR, has not looked like a franchise-altering quarterback like they hoped at all. He hasn't. He flat out hasn't. I'm not saying he never will be. I'm not saying he doesn't have the potential to be, but he just hasn't been there. And then when you have Justin Herbert tearing it up, it makes that look even worse. And then Austin Jackson is the worst starting left tackle in the NFL. Austin Jackson is a complete nightmare. He is so brutal. He is one of the biggest. He is probably the biggest weak spot on a just atrocious offensive line in Miami. And then Noah Igbenogany can barely even be activated for games. He's a healthy scratch for games in his second year being a first-round pick. So those 3 picks look absolutely terrible. And at some point, the Dolphins organization, they're going to have to ask, and Stephen Ross, he's going to have to ask himself some tough questions. And somebody's going to be held accountable for going through this rebuild and not having a winning football team. And I know it's early, it's only 3 weeks, and things can turn around, but things do not look good in Miami. There's some major holes for this team, and somebody's going to have to be held accountable for these holes, for not being a team that's that they don't look like they're going to be a team that's competing for a playoff spot. And if that's the case, I mean, we could see some firings. And I think Chris Grier, the GM, could be on his way out. And I said at the beginning of the season, there's potential Brian Flores could be on the way out, which seems insane. And I really do think Brian Flores is a really tremendous head coach. But his inability to hire the right coordinators, and their offensive coordinator, their co-offensive coordinators have been a complete disaster through 3 weeks. They had a wide receiver screen they threw in their own end zone for a safety, which is one of the most mind-boggling things ever. But Brian Flores has hired, fired, signed players, cut players, and the very next year hired and fired coaches year after year, and it just so many weird things about this team and so many tough questions that need to be answered. So the Dolphins rebuild, they look to be a major stock down because this team does not look to be on a forward progression based on where they were last year. And keeping on the stock down, rookie quarterbacks are a major stock down through 3 weeks. Go back to the preseason, and everybody, including myself, was singing the praises of these rookie quarterbacks, saying how everybody looks so comfortable, everybody looks so good, everybody's going to be awesome, the quarterbacks are all so great, and playing quarterback is so easy for these guys. Well, through 3 weeks, that's not the case anymore. The first 2 picks, the first 2 quarterbacks taken, Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, currently lead the NFL with 7 interceptions. They've struggled at times, and Zach Wilson and the Jets were shut out this week by the Denver Broncos. Trevor Lawrence, they've both shown flashes, but they've also shown at times to just look absolutely horrendous on their respective teams. Then you go to Mac Jones. People were singing his praises in week 1, but he hasn't been an explosive quarterback. He throws a lot of short passes, and they haven't really relied on him to be a guy to carry that team. They've been extremely conservative with him, and he's been extremely conservative as a quarterback. He actually threw 3 interceptions against the New Orleans Saints this week, so he struggled. And then Justin Fields in his first start this week against the Cleveland Browns struggled mightily. He was sacked 9 times against Myles Garrett, who had 4.5 of those 9 sacks. He went 6 for 20. This is through 4 quarters. 6 for 20, 68 yards through the air, and then he had 12 yards on the ground. And I think a lot of that blame goes to Matt Nagy. He did absolutely nothing to help Justin Fields. No play action, no rollouts, no doing anything that Justin Fields is good at. And I'm obviously a Justin Fields stan. I've liked him since college. I thought he could be one of the best quarterbacks in this draft class. So I'm a little salty towards Matt Nagy, and I think he should be fired for what he did this Sunday. Just completely atrocious game plan and play calling. But, some of it you could say, I guess, was on Justin Fields. And this rookie class so far through three weeks, these quarterbacks, they've looked rough. And that's okay. Quarterbacks, it's tough to be a quarterback in the NFL. It's tough to be a rookie quarterback. It's tough to learn the hardest position, the most important position in the NFL. So, I don't blame them for being a stock down. But as of right now, the rookie quarterbacks are on the downward trend. And then up to a stock up. And this stock up is NFL kickers. This week, kickers had themselves a heyday. And the biggest of them all, Justin Tucker, the best kicker in the NFL, kicked a 66-yard game-winning field goal. That's right, 66 yards. The previous NFL record was 64 yards by Matt Prater. Justin Tucker kicks a 66-yarder to win the game versus the Detroit Lions. An incredible kick. If you have not watched this kick, you got to go back and watch it. I literally had to pick my jaw up off the floor. It was absolutely incredible. He kicks this 66-yard kick. It goes off the crossbar and then bounces in. No time left on the clock. Insanity. And if anybody deserves to have the longest kick in NFL history, it's Justin Tucker. He's the best kicker in NFL history. I don't care what anybody says. The most accurate kicker ever. The most incredible kicker you'll ever see. And other kickers that had themselves a good week. Mason Crosby, we talked about earlier. He had a 51-yard game winner in the Green Bay Packers game versus the San Francisco 49ers. Younghoe Koo, one of the best kickers in the NFL, hit a 40-yarder to win versus the New York Giants. So kickers had themselves a great week, except for Matt Prater, who previously held the longest field goal in NFL history. So I guess you could say a stock down on Matt Prater because he attempted a 68-yarder. The same week that Justin Tucker hits a 66-yard field goal, Matt Prater attempts a 68-yarder. It is short, returned by Jamal Agnew of the Jacksonville Jaguars for 109 yards for a touchdown. So it goes from what would have been the longest made kick in NFL history to the longest play in NFL history, tied with a couple of other plays. Jamal Agnew takes it all the way back for a touchdown. So a rough go-around for Matt Prater. But other than Matt Prater, a good week for NFL kickers. And another stock up, and we talked about rookie quarterbacks. Let's talk about a rookie receiver. Jamar Chase's catching ability is a major stock up. We talked about all preseason long his inability to catch. He had drop after drop. It looked to be a confidence issue. Then he was saying that, the NFL ball is hard to catch because you can't see it because it doesn't have the white stripes. And then we were like, that looks bad. But Jamar Chase has been okay. He's been okay. He's been catching basically everything. Through 3 games, he has 4 touchdown receptions, 11 receptions overall, only 1 drop. So Jamar Chase has made all of us look silly for doubting him in the preseason, doubting his catching ability because he's been incredible through 3 weeks. And then on to a few more stock ups and stock downs. We're going to go to stock down on Ravens receivers. We talked about Jamar Chase being able to catch the ball. The Ravens receivers could not catch the ball. Mark Andrews has struggled with this throughout his career. He had some major drops in this game. And then Marquise Brown in the game versus the Detroit Lions. The Ravens did end up winning that game, but Marquise Brown struggled tremendously. He had 3 just terrible drops, 2 that could have been touchdowns. So stock down on the Ravens receivers. And another stock down on Big Ben's revenge tour. This was something that was talked about. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they decided to run it back with Ben Roethlisberger. They figured, he can't possibly be as bad as he was down the stretch last year in 2020. Well, through 3 weeks, it does not look good for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They somehow, and it seems insane to even think about at this point, they went into Buffalo. They beat the Buffalo Bills in week 1, and since then, they've lost 2 straight games. They lost the game this past week to the Cincinnati Bengals. It wasn't even close, really. They were completely outclassed by the Cincinnati Bengals. Ben Roethlisberger looks old. He looks washed. It's just a completely unexplosive offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They can't get anything accomplished. Ben Roethlisberger essentially only threw to Najee Harris in this game. Najee Harris actually breaks the all-time record for most targets by a running back in this game. That kind of shows how explosive this offense is that Ben Roethlisberger basically only feels comfortable throwing short of the sticks to Najee Harris. And he had one play that was 4th and 10, and instead of attempting to throw the ball 10 yards, because you need 10 yards to pick up a first down, he gets scared and throws it to the flat to Najee Harris. They don't pick it up, and Ben Roethlisberger looks bad. I'm just wondering, what was the plan for the Pittsburgh Steelers? What was their plan? This reminds me so much of the New York Giants when they kept bringing back Eli Manning, when it was very obvious Eli Manning was not a very good quarterback anymore. They kept bringing him back. They even drafted a running back in the first round, like the Pittsburgh Steelers did. I guess they thought that would fix all of the problems. They drafted Saquon Barkley. The Steelers drafted Najee Harris. And guess what? When your offensive line is still pretty bad, the running back is not going to solve the problems. And when your quarterback is washed up and can't play anymore, the running back is not going to solve the problems. And not only do you have Big Ben being incompetent at the quarterback position, you did essentially nothing at the backup quarterback position, unless you count bringing in Dwayne Haskins, who's shown completely nothing through his 2 or 3 years in the NFL. You have Dwayne Haskins and Mason Rudolph, so you can't even really bench Big Ben, because what do you have behind him? You have Mason Rudolph, who I don't want to see Mason Rudolph play ever again. I know what Mason Rudolph is. He's not. No thanks. I don't want to see him play anymore. But I don't want to see Big Ben either, but I also don't want to see Dwayne Haskins. So it's just a terrible situation for the Steelers offense. And so they get a major stock down. But speaking of the team that they beat in week 1, it's a stock up for the Buffalo Bills. I doubted them last week. I thought they didn't play that well against the Miami Dolphins. They completely proved me wrong. And Josh Allen is back in a big way. An unbelievable performance in a 43-21 victory over the Washington football team. Josh Allen finishes 32 for 43, 358 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. They look to be the same old Bills, the same Bills we saw last year. Despite struggling a little bit offensively through the first 2 weeks, Josh Allen balled the heck out this week. So a major stock up for the Buffalo Bills. And back on a few more negatives on stock downs. I'm going to say stock down on the Broncos receiving any credit for being 3-0. And, it's impressive to be 3-0. And listen, you play who's in front of you, but the Broncos have yet to play and win a game against a team that has won a game. The opponents that they've played through 3 weeks are 0-9. They've beaten the 0-3 New York Giants, the 0-3 Jacksonville Jaguars, and then this week the 0-3 New York Jets. So despite being 3-0, I don't envision very many people giving the Denver Broncos a whole lot of respect. You got to beat a team that has won a game, and I don't know if it's totally fair to say that, they shouldn't deserve any respect. I think they do. I think the Broncos have shown some things, and I really like Teddy Bridgewater and these offensive weapons, and their defense is chock full of talent, and I think they can be a good team and can be a playoff contender, but you're going to have to win a game against a team that has actually won a game this season. And then my final stock down and my final installment in this segment, and it's stock down on me understanding the Minnesota Vikings or the Seattle Seahawks. Both of these teams, I just don't know what to even make of them. They're both 1-2 now. The Vikings went in and won the game in convincing fashion this week against the Seattle Seahawks, 30-17. The Seahawks at times have looked like a dominant offense. They dominated the Colts in week 1, and then they played really well in the first half against the Titans last week, but blew the game at the end. And now in this game, they blew the game again. They scored 0 points in the second half after scoring 17 in the first half. They couldn't score anything in the second half. And the Vikings looked really good even without Dalvin Cook. I just don't know what to make with these two teams. I don't know who's better. I guess the Vikings because they won this week, but either one of these teams to me could be either a playoff team or a team that ends up 6-11. I cannot get a read on these teams. Kirk Cousins, though, he's played pretty well through 3 weeks. He finished 30 for 38, 323 yards, and 3 touchdowns in this game. A great performance from him. And Russell Wilson and this offense for the Seahawks, again, at times look really good, but I don't know. I just can't. It's a major stock down on my understanding of these two teams. That wraps up the preview, or the review, rather, of the Week 3 of the 2021 NFL season. And obviously, I can't talk about the Philadelphia Eagles versus Dallas Cowboys game. For those of you that are maybe tuning into this show for the first time, I record this on Monday evening, so I don't know the outcome of that game at this point, so we won't talk about that game. But we talked about basically every other game that happened in Week 3. Now moving on to week number 4 of the 2021 NFL season, and on to my picks, as well as Mike's picks, who's, he's not here, but he's still here in spirit. He gave me his picks for week 4 of the 2021 NFL season. And first up, we have the Thursday night game, the 2 number 1 overall picks, the last 2 number 1 overall picks, Joe Burrow versus Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville versus Cincinnati. I'm going to pick Cincinnati. Jacksonville looked like one of the worst teams in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. The Bengals, they look frisky at times. I haven't trusted them, and I didn't pick them last week, but they look good. And Mike also is picking the Cincinnati Bengals to win on Thursday night. And then on to the next game, the New York Giants at the New Orleans Saints, the first 1 o'clock game on Sunday. And I'm going to pick the New Orleans Saints to win that game. The Giants, they're going to be desperate to win a game, but I trust Sean Payton and his ability to, get something out of Jameis Winston. They're another team that's been really hard to get a read on, but Mike is also going with the New Orleans Saints in that game. And then on to Kansas City versus Philadelphia. Philadelphia is currently playing as we're recording right now. Kansas City, I think, gets a bounce-back win against a pretty good Philadelphia Eagles team, but I think Kansas City, they're going to be all right, and they're going to get the win. And Mike also picking Kansas City in that game. And then on to Houston at the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to pick the Bills. We don't need to discuss that too much. Mike also picking the Bills. Obviously, Houston is bad at football. And the Bills, they looked pretty good this last week. So then on to the next game, Indianapolis at Miami. And despite me not being too happy with the Dolphins through 3 weeks, I'm going to pick the Dolphins to win this game. Carson Wentz, he did not look healthy in this last week, and they lost Quentin Nelson to injury as well. The Dolphins defense, I think, has played really well at times, and I think they could give Carson Wentz fits if he plays in this game. And if he doesn't, I think the backup quarterbacks that the Colts have are not as good as Jacoby Brissett, who the Dolphins have at backup quarterback. So in the Jacoby Brissett revenge game, I'm going to pick my Miami Dolphins to win, probably in an unimpressive fashion. But Mike is going to go with the Colts in this game. And then on to the next game, Carolina at Dallas. I'm going to pick Dallas to win that game. Carolina, they've had some good wins. They beat Houston this last week. They've had convincing wins. I don't think they've played much of anybody through 3 weeks. They've beaten so far the Houston Texans, like we talked about. They beat the New York Jets, and then they beat the New Orleans Saints. So not really world beaters. I want to see them against a legit team, and I think Dallas is just that. So I'm going to pick Dallas to win that game. Mike also picking Dallas. And then on to Cleveland at Minnesota. I'm going to pick Minnesota to win this game, actually. Cleveland, I think, I do like the Cleveland Browns. They're one of my favorite teams this year. Minnesota, though, another team I just can't get a read on. This feels like a game. I'm just going off vibes on this one. This feels like a game that Minnesota is gonna pull out the win. And Mike is also going with Minnesota. Okay, I did not know that. He's going with the Minnesota Vikings as well. Dalvin Cook hopefully back for this game. So we're both picking Minnesota to beat Cleveland. And then Tennessee at the New York Jets. The Titans. Mike's also picking the Titans. Don't need to discuss that one. Then Detroit at Chicago. I'm going to pick Motor City Dan, as Mike calls him, to beat Justin Fields or Nick Foles or whoever starting this game. Please, Matt Nagy, please don't start Nick Foles. But I'm going to pick the Lions to win, and so is Mike. And then Washington at Atlanta, the final 1 o'clock game. I'm going to pick Atlanta to win this game. Washington, I don't know. Their defense has not played as well as I thought they would be. I thought they would be one of the best defenses in the NFL. They haven't played that well. The Falcons offense maybe, found something. I mean, they didn't really put up very many points. I think they put up 17 points this week, but maybe they find something against a defense that has been underperforming. Mike's going to pick the Washington football team to win that game. And then on to the 4 o'clock games, we have Arizona at the Los Angeles Rams, a big-time AFC West matchup. I'm going to pick the Los Angeles Rams, who are coming off a big victory versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike is also going with the Rams. And then Seattle at San Francisco, the other two NFC West teams. I'm going to pick Seattle to win this game. The Seahawks have another bounce back. They tend to play really well against teams within their own division. Mike is also going with the Seattle Seahawks. And then Pittsburgh at Green Bay. I'm going to pick Green Bay to win that game. Pittsburgh, their offenses look incredibly unexplosive. Either one. They've looked both. And the Green Bay Packers have looked very explosive. Mike's also going with Green Bay. Then Baltimore at Denver. Give me Baltimore. Despite the Broncos being 3-0, I think Baltimore, they did struggle this week against Detroit, but I think Detroit's giving a lot of teams a run for their money. So I'm going to say Baltimore has a get-right game against the undefeated Denver Broncos. And then on to the primetime games. Tampa Bay at New England. Tom Brady's return to Foxborough. Really, really excited for this game. Can't wait to watch this game. This is probably a potential game of the year, whether or not it's a good game or not. Just seeing Tom Brady back in New England. I'm going to pick the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Patriots, their offense just isn't looking good through the first 3 weeks. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers get a major get-right game. Tom Brady is going to be extremely motivated to stick it to Bill Belichick and to his old team in Foxborough. And Mike's also going against his Patriots and picking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then on to the final game, the Monday night game, a really good game. The Las Vegas Raiders, undefeated, versus the team that just beat the Chiefs, the Los Angeles Chargers. This is a really good game. Couple of really good primetime games here to finish off the week. I'm going to pick the Los Angeles Chargers. I like what they're doing. I like their talent offensively and defensively. I think Brandon Staley's shown that he is a formidable NFL coach. Mike is also going with the Los Angeles Chargers to defeat the undefeated Las Vegas Raiders. But that's going to wrap up this week's show. I hope you guys enjoyed. A little bit different. I was kind of used to having a partner on the show, so hopefully it was still entertaining with just my voice in your ears. If you guys enjoy the show, make sure you leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Please, what are you doing if you're not leaving a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts? Like we always say, you don't even have to say something nice. You can say something rude if you want. I would prefer if you didn't, but you could. Just leave us a 5-star rating. and you can say whatever you want in there. Doesn't even matter. Make sure you guys share it with your friends. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at _AverageJoeShow. A really fun 3 weeks. Looking forward to week 4. A bunch of really good matchups. But until then, for JT behind, the editing, and for Mike, who's at home sick right now, we will catch you guys on the next one.